Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange!
Thank you everyone for being here today. This is an important day for a number of reasons. It's an important day because it represents a day in which we stand up for freedom of speech. It's an important day because we stand here in defence of an Australian who has been forced to seek asylum because of direct and indirect threats from the United States over a number of years. It is, however, to the credit of the Australian government that it has not joined in the fatwas coming from Washington. It is to the credit of the Australian government that in recent times it allowed embassy officials, High Commission officials, to visit Julian for the purposes of preparing a new passport. Julian Assange is an Australian citizen. It is time to bring him home. The alternative to bringing him home is simply to go to the United States and the same fate that befell Chelsea Manning will befall him. What Australians don't like to see is their countrymen and women in difficult situations overseas where they face torture, where they face cruel and unusual punishment, and where the community doesn't get behind them. Australians are good at getting behind those of their countrymen and women who find themselves in difficult situations overseas. James Ricketson is a case in point. In the case of Julian Assange, his prominence has ensured over a number of years now a greater awareness and transparency about government activity. No one who believes in democracy could argue against it. So what we say today is very simple. Bring Julian Assange home. This matter lies with the British government, it lies with the Australian government, and it lies with those countries which truly believe in freedom of speech. It is, as I said earlier, to the credit of the current government, Malcolm Turnbull and Julie Bishop, that they have not joined in and endorsed the sort of sentiments we've seen from Mike Pompeo, Jeff Sessions and other members of the Trump administration and the Congress. They have not done that. It is important that we continue to lobby the Australian government, to urge the Australian government to do the right thing by Julian Assange. This nation is ideally placed as a nation which has respect in London and respect in Washington and respect in European capitals to end the impasse and to ensure that humanity prevails. Because at the end of the day, Julian Assange is not simply a publisher, he's a human being. Thank you.
Let me assure you, just because I'm comfortable, I'm not going to go on and off all day, okay? I didn't realise that I'd have to hold this. Can you hold it? Of course I can. Because I've made notes, so I don't want to waffle on. And it's such a big subject. I actually want to start, not with the academic way, where you make a reasoned comment, and then at the end you vindicate whatever you're doing there for, because I've found sometimes that they cut the end off. Yes, I'm going to start. I want you here today, and thanks for coming, to vindicate Julian Assange. He won't hear it, but they will. The people who are cutting off his rights, not only as an Australian but as a human being for doing his job, I often wonder, what do our leaders think they are here for? Has anyone got an idea? What are they supposed to do?
Make our lives hard.
Can't think. Well, I'll tell you now. For a long time, certainly long before my husband was murdered because of trade, trade is now one of the dirtiest words in the English language, and that's what our leaders think that's their jobs. Doesn't matter what happens to anyone, we're going to make money. Sorry guys, that's not good enough. The first casualty is truth, everybody knows that. Does anyone know? I'm going to keep you on your toes here. Does anyone know who said that first? I thought you'd say George Orwell. No, it was a boy called Hiram Johnson. What? What did you think? Oh. There's always a problem with these things. Perhaps I'm spitting into it. Hiram Johnson, he was an American politician, and he said that in World War I. And that's what we're dealing with here. I'll tell you one thing, our politicians, they deny people's freedom, and yet they tell whopping great lies. And I have been the recipient of some amazing lies, which people still believe today about my husband, Greg Shackleton. Okay, poor Julian, he's in solitary confinement. That's the sort of thing that bastards do, even to bad people, but he's not bad. He's done wonderful work in the name of truth. And by their actions, or I should say inactions, the Australian government show they just don't care about Australia. And that was established 40 years ago when 505 were murdered. I want to tell you that at the very least, what I expect from our government is freedom of speech and democracy. Democracy is being denied to Julian Assange. He's not allowed, I suppose you all know this, have you been told this already? I don't want to repeat. He's not allowed, John Pilger sends his greetings by the way. John isn't allowed to see him. He's not allowed a telephone, he hasn't got a computer. He's dying by inches. That's not good enough. And as I said before, I'll say it again, it's by the inaction of our government that's happening. He's an Australian citizen. What can you do when you've got people like that? It's a terrible, terrible sentence that he doesn't deserve. Well, I noticed this morning, and I couldn't resist writing it down, we think that democracy, we think we have it. I don't think we do. I think it's a lie. I think if any one of us gets into trouble, we discover that we don't have the freedoms that we think we have. And that's about to be played out in the Senate. Because what did I read this morning? There are 3 bills being decided on in a few days, and they all decides on national security, on legislation amendments dealing with espionage and foreign interference. These are bills that are going to be passed or not passed, and that's right happening now. I would like to ask how many people lost family in the Great War and in World War II. Put your arm up if you lost family. Right. What do you think they were fighting for? They weren't fighting for money like our lot now. I believe, I knew my grandfather, my great uncle, they didn't die, but a lot of other family members died, and no one comes back from a war fully sane for what they had to do. They were fighting for the rights of human beings. In the last war, we knew that the enemy, everything they said was a lie. Absolutely everything. We don't want that to happen, but we've got a government that seems committed to say, well, we only have to make sure we get money. And I'm sorry, that's not what I expect from them. I expect to be free to say what I like, so long as it isn't rude. Yeah. So I wonder if we could give a big cheer for Assange. He won't hear it, but they will. Okay. Good on you, Assange. You're one of our mob. True Australian hero who will be idolised forever.
Yes. Thank you, Shirley.
Well, thank you all for coming today. As has already been raised, today's event in Melbourne is part of vigils which have been conducted in London and around the world to demand the immediate and unconditional release of WikiLeaks editor Julian Assange. Speaking to the United Nations Human Rights Council yesterday in Geneva, one of Julian's principled legal defenders, Jennifer Robinson, said the following: "The United Kingdom is showing deliberate disregard for his medical needs." She said Julian was being asked to choose between his human rights and his human rights to medical treatment. No one, she said, should have to make that choice. She called on the British authorities to end their, quote, deprivation of liberty, respect his physical integrity and freedom of movement, and afford him the right to compensation, as was demanded by the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention in December 2015. Now, at the vigil in London, speakers will no doubt centrally raise that demand on the British government. Here in Australia, our focus has to be on the responsibility for the persecution of Julian Assange and WikiLeaks by successive Labor and coalition governments. At the demonstration on Sunday, both myself and journalist John Pilger raised a core demand: the Turnbull government must act now to secure the unconditional release of Julian Assange from his involuntary confinement in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. We are not asking Turnbull, we are not begging Turnbull, we are demanding that they act. In 2010, the Labor government of Julia Gillard threw Julian Assange to the wolves. Gillard denounced the activities of a media organisation as illegal activity. Her Attorney General declared they would collaborate with Washington to prosecute him for espionage. Why? It is because the Labor government and every successive Australian government has fully aligned with the United States in a military and strategic build-up against China. They are fully supportive of the US military alliance, so they don't care what happens to an Australian citizen who exposes the war crimes of the United States government and their own war crimes.
Shame, America, shame!
Shame Australia!
Labor, no less than Obama's administration, was hostile to the existence of a media organisation that was fiercely prepared to let you know the truth about what goes on in the corridors of power. Australian officials have done nothing for 6 years to assist Julian Assange under conditions of his confinement in Ecuador. Over the previous 18 months, they did nothing to assist him as he had to fight a protracted legal battle against fake, fraudulent, manufactured allegations of sexual assault. Slandered and smeared, the Australian government did nothing to defend him. Julian Assange was forced to seek asylum with a small South American country because the government of his own country refused to defend him. The Australian government, the government of Malcolm Turnbull, has undeniable diplomatic power. It has legal discretion. That is, it has... Did we die? Oh no, here we go. It has legal discretion. It has the legal right under international and national law to intervene even in the British court system. In the case of Assange, the issue is not that the Australian government cannot act, it is that it is refusing to act. Instead, what is being done is Australia is supporting the vendetta to have Julian Assange confined to a US prison cell or worse. As I said on Sunday, we hold the Labor government, the Labor Party and the coalition parties that hold government now fully responsible for all the harm and all the outrages that have been committed against a principled journalist who is an Australian citizen. We will hold them responsible for what happens next. They will be held to account for anything that happens to Julian Assange. Now there is enormous support internationally for WikiLeaks and for Assange. It is being intimidated, however, by the fact that many organisations which once proudly declared their defence for media freedom, WikiLeaks and Assange, have now abandoned him. In this country, among the ranks of those who have abandoned him is the entire mass media, the Greens, independent Andrew Wilkie, and of course the trade unions.
Amnesty International.
Now the fight to defend Assange is a crucial one, and it must go forward from today. But it is going to have to go forward not by making appeals to the organisations that have abandoned him and lined up with the US military alliance. It will have to go forward by a turn to the working class. The mass of the people, the working people, must be mobilised in defence of democracy and all the social rights that are now under attack. These rallies on June 19th are important. They must be the launching pad for an ongoing, renewed fight for Assange's freedom. You all know the situation is very serious. They are seeking to break Julian Assange physically and psychologically. It is now over 11 weeks he has been deprived of any external communication, and as his lawyers continually are warning, his health situation is extremely grave. If Julian Assange is forced by the criminal actions of the British government and the Australian government, and he is railroaded into a British prison cell on bail-related charges while extradition processes get fought through the British courts to prevent him being effectively rendered to the United States, to be tried for being a non-hostile intelligence state agency, that is espionage, a foreign spy, an enemy combatant, then the fight to mobilise masses of people in his defence will be even more important. I urge everyone here today to go from this rally, speak to as many people as you can in an ongoing way to seek to develop a mass political movement, as I said, for the defence of Assange, but the defence of all democratic and social rights which his fate is bound up with. Thank you.
I'd like to say big thanks to my brother for organising today, like he was one of the first kind of instigators, troublemakers. And that, to be honest, like when he was organising this, it was in a pretty much of a vacuum of action and things around the 60th anniversary, the SCP was still going to organise something in Sydney and stuff, but there was just the London Vigil, which has been run by a handful of grassroots volunteers. This is the Assange campaign. It's the heart, the real people, the grassroots, the people who give a damn. They don't even belong to organisations, most of them. They just got a heart and a conscience and a soul. and a thirst for the truth and justice, and can recognise an historical hero when they see one. And I've been on, and I give credit to my brother for going out on a limb and having the courage to organise that when there's not much happening, because that's one of the hardest times to organise things, is when there's resistance, is when there's silence, is when there's apathy, is when there's confusion, disorientation, hatred, fear. This is all the government wants, the ruling class wants us to be in this state. They don't want us to be clear-headed. They don't want us to unite. They don't want us to see that we're all in the same boat and that we're all Julian Assange, and he's fighting for all our speech and all our rights, and he's showing us what war is really about, which is the worst violence against men, women and children that can be done with the most horrible machines and weapons ever invented. This is what war is. It's absolute horror. I saw one shot from WikiLeaks on the Facebook of a little girl covered in blood, I think in Iraq, you know, and there's an American soldier standing over her. And I have a child, you know, I have children. How can anyone with children or not children, anyone who loves humanity, who loves life, can look at this and justify it? It's not justifiable. That's why they have to keep it in the darkness. That's why they have to lie to us. That's why they have to say it's in our name. And that's what Julian is exploding with the truth. That's what WikiLeaks has demolished. And that's why they want him dead and silenced. Because this is about freedom of speech for everybody, whether we agree, disagree or not. It's about the right to say how we feel and what we think and what our opinion is and what we think about what's going on in the world and what the government's doing and what the rich are doing. We have a right to comment and observe and penetrate to the bottom of these matters and find the truth. Even in the Bible it says the truth shall set you free. But I just want to say I've been on the internet and people are mystified outside Australia why we're not getting behind Julian Assange. They're mystified. They think, what's wrong with Australia? And I'm not making this a nationalistic issue, because this is a global issue for the international working class.
Yes.
But they don't understand when Julian's father, who I can honour and commend for turning up today and for his personal family struggle, I honour you. Thank you, you know, for turning up today and for your courage. And you know, when we can stand by his family, why aren't the whole of Australia standing with Julian's family, you know? Why aren't they standing with his family, you know? It's just, people don't understand how this isn't an issue in Australia, and I don't understand being in Australia. I don't understand standing here in the streets of Melbourne, why this isn't huge.
Because spy cops have infiltrated.
Yes, because the CIA. Yes, that's right. In John Pilger's speech. That's right. That's right.
That's right. The anarchists.
That's right. Okay, you can get up and talk in a minute. I'll going to say, John Pilger, I'll finish it. I'll wind it up. John Pilger said that the CIA was doing a psyops operation, black ops, to besmirch the name of WikiLeaks, to besmirch the name of Julian Assange, to create confusion and bad feeling and bad reputation around Julian. And they've obviously been very successful, haven't they? Because there should be 100,000 people here today, and we have to make sure the next time that we wake everyone up to the lies that have been told about Julian, all the lies, because now it's about the lies about him. He exploded the lies about the world, and now it's the lies about him, and we need to explode those lies and get everyone here next time, and this needs to be a freaking revolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody. I just want to thank you on behalf of myself and Julian's sister, his brother's mother, his family, his aunties here today, to thank you all for your support, and I'm sure that your support will generate the energy to bring Julian home, and we can then join him and he can thank you personally. Thank you. Cheerio.
Bring him home! Bring him home! Bring him home! Bring him home! Bring him home!